on to the main event, and that is space sponsor Wangmagwi.
So, what did you think about it?
Um, so before I start completely talking about the movie, I do want to say that this is an SRS cinema release. This was a lost Holy Grail movie. I'm air quotes around the lost, but if you guys want, they have the Blu-ray release over on SRS Cinema Store, and the DVD copy for mass release is going to be coming out next month.
Yes, no, next June
June.
3rd, June 13th, same day as Shin Ultraman is getting its physical media release.
Yeah.
So the benefit to getting it from SRS is that you will get one of these sweet posters like you have behind us here.
Yes, and it's the Blu-ray.
And it's the Blu-ray,
and
you get the postcard with it, bookmarks. SRS always gives you a ton of swag whenever you order stuff. It's always limited to while supplies last, so I'm not making too many promises on the bookmarks there, guys. If you don't get upset with me if you don't get a bookmark, but
yeah. And I do want to say that the transfer on this is amazing. The detail in the movie is really good.
It's like I looked on Reel, like I was like, this is a much older movie, and for something that was lost, you would think the film would have been like beat up.
The whatever source that they had was, I'm assuming it was original or very close to, maybe it was a master copy. It was very, very well maintained, and they didn't do too much correcting on it. So you still have your film grain, like it's not smoothed out or anything like that.
Yes.
So if you're into that and you really like these preserved films, check it out. It's really a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah, I was like, it looks like too good. It looks almost like they made a black and white movie. Like they made a movie today and they put a black and white filter on it.
It did.
Like,
it really did.
Like the people looked like really good.
Yeah. And what year was this movie again? I'm like blanking.
I don't know. I actually did
I'll
not
look it up.
I did not write that down actually. I want
to say it's 60. It's 67.
Oh, I was going to say 64, 67.
So, one thing, again, before we start getting into plot, that I want to say about this movie is the some parts of the city look very bare, but other parts of Seoul, the buildings were amazing. Like they were so much better than the Toho buildings at the time.
Some of the models that they did were really good. Like especially like those bigger skyscraper buildings that they did.
They reminded me of like Godzilla 84.
Yes.
Like those style buildings. Yes. So I was very impressed with that, especially for a lower budget movie.
The set building was really good for the... And the other thing about this is the monster has a ton of... There's part of the plot here that we're avoiding getting into right now is there's not a lot of it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just... The monster is on screen for, I don't know, what would you say, like 80% of the movie? Like, the whole movie's a monster attack.
Yeah,
like, from beginning to end.
Yeah, I would say probably 60, but that's still a lot for a kaiju movie.
I feel like this monster's got a lot of screen time.
There's Godzilla movies that maybe he's got 10 minutes of screen time. So, they were very generous with the kaiju time on this. And they had sets of, like, the kaiju built. So they had a hand set. They had a headset. They had just like a lot of like on the kaiju set building as well, which is really creative and not really anything you kind of see in another kaiju movie.
Oh no!
Are people directly interacting with the monster? Usually, the monster's far off in the city. You might see a foot, and that's about it.
There's not many movies where they've actually gone on top of the kaiju.
Yeah. And, I think the comparison's like King Kong. But even with King Kong, you usually just get the hand. You really don't see, them actually interacting with the monster that much.
Yeah.
So, some very impressive things are done in this movie. I guess now we can get into the plot, kind of.
Sure.
I watched the movie twice. The first time I watched it, it was a little disappointing, to be honest with you. There was definitely some funny moments, but a lot of it was kind of like missed it kind of flew past me a little bit. Might be a cultural thing, but rewatching the movie, there's definitely some things I picked up on. So the funny thing is, it starts off with these aliens, and they're like, well, we're so advanced, and we're gonna conquer Earth, and all this stuff, and they're like, the Earthlings' technology isn't good enough to detect us. So
Yes.
so the first thing that we get on the Earth, the first scene is them being picked up by the Korean military on their radar.
It was like, we're detecting a suspicious object in the storm. We need all the Air Force people to report to the base immediately to inspect what's going on.
So yeah,
And then another thing is, like, they don't really have a ton of technology because it's just their ship, and then they send the monster down. And the monster, to me, appeared like it was a prisoner on the ship because it's in a cage.
it
And it's kind of
was.
normal
Yeah.
size, and then when it gets to Earth, it gets big, but they don't show that. It's just
So
the
they say that
first
there's
scene-
a pressure. The difference in air pressure is going to make the kaiju bigger and more angry.
yes.
So
In my
it's-
opinion, it wasn't very angry. It was a pretty docile kaiju the whole movie,
Yeah.
honestly.
yeah, it took its time destroying those sets.
Yeah. Yes, it would, like, inspect the sets.
Yes. So we have the Commander Ho and his fiance, and basically he has to go because he's in charge of the Air Force, or like the plane fighters. He's not in charge. He's like the head pilot, and she's like, "Oh, we're getting married tomorrow. We're still gonna go on with this, right?"
And he's like, of course.
Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, sure." It was also a giant monsoon that is
Yeah,
supposed to happen, but we never see a monsoon in the whole movie. They keep talking about this
I
monsoon
did not
and how
even-
the monsoon's going to be covering up the invasion.
I forgot about that,
And there's
honestly.
never a monsoon.
Oh my god! Because then he just got all into the monster rush, and I had the monsoon thing completely. I
And-
forgot about it.
and-
Now that
and-
it's-
And like, in the opening night scene, they kind of show it being a little windy, a little bit. But then, like, the next day when it's supposed to be monsooning,
It's like sunny.
it's a perfectly good day.
Yeah, it's dry day, and the bride's crying that her wedding day is going to be ruined because of the storm. They were
Yeah.
still going on about it. They didn't know quite exactly at the time that there was a monster until, like, her aunt comes running into the room while she's getting ready, and she's like, "What are you guys still doing here? King Kong's coming to destroy the city." They
Yeah.
literally say King Kong is coming, and I'm like, how the hell do they know about the monster already? Like, it just kind of like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's one of the things that they like that they touch on in the commentary. They're just like they're like one like for aliens that are saying that they've never been to Earth and don't know anything about Earth. They know like the name of Korea. They know the name of the monsoon that's going to be hitting Korea. They know what level technology we have. He's like there's a lot of plot holes. Like even like the Korean movie guy, which I forgot the names, but like the guy from like the California University. He's like, there's a lot of plot holes in this movie, but
Oh boy, are there.
yeah. So as like they're fleeing, we kind of cut to kind of our secondary characters, which was pretty crazy. Like they gave us backstories about these two actors in the commentary. The one that wore the hat with like the flatter face, like the taller one, he had a 30-year acting career and is in over 400 Korean movies.
Wow.
Yeah, 400. He'd have that. And then the guy who played Commander Ho, I think he was like in like 300 movies and would often have 2 movies a month coming out.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
That's pretty crazy. But
And-
the thing is, he's not even in the movie that much.
No, he's not.
Like,
and then
they open it. So they open this movie like this bride and this commander are gonna be like the main focus of the movie, and like
he might have 5 minutes of screen time.
barely.
Yeah.
And the bride is in it more than him.
Yes.
And then we cut to these two guys. But before we cut to these two guys, actually, the monster does appear, and the bride and her mom flee, and the mom faints, the bride faints, and
And
then the
he
monster just picks up the bride, and then he walks around the rest of the movie like this, just
because he
holding.
doesn't know what to do with her.
He's like,
The
why did I pick this up?
Yeah, and like
The
that's
whole
another thing that
movie.
like the
It's
the
just
Korean film specialist.
he's just
He's like I
like,
want to make the distinction that this is not King Kong. He's like he has zero attachment to this lady. He's like he's just holding her and doesn't know what to do with her.
to me, this movie is just a comedy. Honestly,
Eh,
I cracked up through the whole thing.
yeah, now that I've rewatched it the second time, there's definitely a lot more comedic moments. I don't think I'm gonna be rewatching it for probably like 5 years, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. Because
I got
when
a
you were
lot of other things I gotta
when you were
watch.
texting me about it, you're like, you really oversold this movie. I'm like, this thing was hysterical. I'm like, I don't know how you're not loving it.
So the other gentleman in this Laurel and Hardy duo, the shorter gentleman that has the wife,
Yes.
um, apparently he hosted like this like Korean version of American Idol for over 20 years. And it was a weekly television show that aired every single week for 20 years. And he just
Wow.
passed away in 2023
Oh
or
man.
2022.
Oh wow.
So
Jeez.
they were like he's not really known for being an actor. Like he's like a TV personality, like almost like a Ryan Seacrest or like a I guess Dick Clark would be a more
Yeah.
apropos. Where it's just like this like TV legend was in this like obscure movie.
Wow.
But like
So we have these two guys, and they're
yeah.
basically just degenerate gamblers in the
Yes.
middle of a kaiju attack. They're in the middle of the street, and they're the one guy. He's married, as you said, and he's betting his house and his wife that he could outlast the other guy without running away from the kaiju. And the other guy's just basically betting his whole life savings, everything he's got. Um, and the space monster appears. The police, people are running by them. The police come running by them, shooting in the sky, and like, what are you doing? Go! And the two of them just still stand there, and they keep like trying not to be scared, and then they're hugging each other like because they're scared,
Yeah.
and then they both take off at the exact same time. They both just start running.
But they're like this doesn't count.
Yes, they're like, this doesn't count. And then the one guy jumps in the suit, the other guy jumps in the garbage can, and the space monster walks by, kicks the garbage can, and the guy gets a little beat up. And
Yeah,
the guy,
but I think that like the blood was like actually like oil. Like there's like a little oil can there.
yeah,
So like it looked like he was a lot worse than he was.
yeah,
But like he got his head rocked, so he's a
yeah,
little loopy.
yeah. He got kicked by a kaiju with like a can. Like he got kicked a good couple of feet.
Yeah. So then they end up back at like the guy with the wife's house, and the guy's like, "Oh, you're my new wife now. I want you in a bed."
He's like,
And-
yeah. And the other guy's like dazed, and he's like, ugh. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's trying to kiss her the whole time, and she's like, no kissing, no kissing.
yeah, she's like
And then-
hitting him and everything.
Yeah. And then the monster roars, and then she's like, all right, new husband. I need
Yes.
you." She starts calling him new husband, and while
Yeah,
her
'cause-
regular husband's on the floor, and she calls her old husband, and I'm like,
And then she's like, take me away. And then she's like, we're just one big family now. And they're like hiding him, and like the house is like getting like ripped apart. So the film guy in the commentary, he was like, it's like the way that they treat women, like they were treating like their wives in this movie. He's like, that's not like the way like Korean culture is or was at the time.
it's just
like,
degenerate.
yeah, he's
gamblers.
like, this is just to show like how degenerate these people are.
Oh my god.
So we'll see these characters later, but then it cuts to the I guess like the secondary protagonist of this movie, and that's the name is Squirrel of the kid.
Oh, I didn't
It's
know
in
that.
it's in the credits of it. So that's
Yeah,
what they were saying
This
in the movie.
like they really didn't like put out anybody's name
They
at all.
barely said name. Like Commander Ho, you get it from the credits, and if you look really close at his name badge, it actually says his name on his like military
Oh,
badge over here.
yeah.
but, like,
There was like no name. So when I was writing, I was like
Barely
the bride,
any names.
the commander, the kid, the gambling degenerates.
So What's something that's not made clear in the movie is that like it's obvious that the kid's homeless and
Yes.
is looting somebody's house, but like
Yes.
playing. He's a kid. He's being playful about it.
Yeah.
But it's actually the bedroom of the bride.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So yeah, because like the bobbleheads match and like the mirror, and you can actually see like her bed in the background, but they don't make it very obvious, and they don't really draw a reference to it.
Oh.
But it is 100%. That's why later on in the movie, when they meet up, she's like, "Where did you get this apple?"
Oh. That's hysterical. That's good. That's good. Now it makes sense.
So he like he's like he has like a little knife.
And he's got all this food out too in their house. He's taking out like all their food because everybody's evacuated, so it's just an empty house. He's got the radio on.
Yeah. So he goes on top of a building. He's got a little like kitchen knife, and it's not even like a chef's knife. It's like
a steak knife.
yeah, it's like a steak knife. It's not very big.
It's not big or sharp. It's like yeah. I'm pretty sure it's like a steak knife.
So he gets on the kaiju, is playing around in the kaiju's ear, cuts out one eardrum.
And then he falls into the skull.
Falls through the skull like it's a cartoon. Pees in like his like
yes,
nasal.
He starts falling out of his nose, and then he gets up and pees.
Yeah, he like unzips and like pees in like the guy's like nose.
Yeah,
and then he goes up the other ear, cuts out that eardrum, and that's basically like his whole. But this is like 20 minutes. It's like really long.
Yeah, this is super abridged right now. I mean, before he even climbs onto the kaiju too, he's listening to the radio, and he's like, "Oh, they're all cowards. They don't know what they're doing." And so the kid climbs on the roof, gets on the kaiju, and all that happens. But like, yeah, this whole like he's like getting knocked around the whole time. The space monster's trying to get him out of his ear, and he's knocking him back and forth in his skull, and the kid's just rolling around in this monster's skull, and finally, after he cuts the second eardrum, he like sort of pokes out. He sees a bride just there on the hand because the guy doesn't know what the hell to do with her. He's like, "I picked this thing up and I don't know what to do now. I don't know if I should put it down and just keep walking." And the kid kind of peeks out the ear. He sees her. He calls to her, and she kind of like looks up at him and then passes out again.
Yeah.
And then he looks towards the back and he sees a device on the kaiju's back. So he finally kind of climbs down. And it turns out it's like the control device, and he like pulls like it looks like a little tiny like microphone almost out of it. And it's funny that I call it a microphone because later on in the movie, on the spaceship, we see the aliens using that device that's the control thing on its back as a microphone. It's the exact same prop. So he pulls this thing out of the kaiju, and it's just all this wire. He's just pulling it out, and it cuts back to the alien ship for like a little. And they're like, "Oh, we've lost control of the kaiju. That's the radio device." And they're like, "Oh, use the secondary radio waves or something like that."
Yeah. And like one of the other jokes is like, not only did they get the radar thing wrong, but they were like, "Oh, they must have taken out the kaiju with their advanced weaponry," and it's like a kid with a dull knife.
And this kid is cutting the kaiju's eardrums with a knife, like a steak knife. I mean,
yes. So like this kaiju's like not strong
as indestructible
at all.
as they thought.
And then even at the end of the movie, the way they kill the kaiju's like really nothing. They really didn't do anything to the kaiju. But we'll get to that at the end. There's some funny bits in this where they're kind of everybody in the city is evacuated to this giant tower, and there's a couple funny bits in it.
The whole like just the people in the streets are even funny. Like, you know, like when we've seen Godzilla movies, War of the Gargantuas, Gamera, whenever people are evacuating the city, they're evacuating like very uniform and everyone's going in the same direction. A very uniform, organized evacuation. It's a little chaotic, but it's literally like they were like, "All right, for this scene, just run wherever the hell you want to go." And it's just like people are just like walking around, running around in like circles.
Yes,
like, their chaos is hysterical.
Like people are going like all crisscross directions. Even the police officers are running like randomly. And in reality, it's probably just like we need people running for this scene, so they
Yeah.
just ran around in a circle. But like, even in like the commentary, the guy's like, he's like, you can see how like completely unorganized
Yeah.
like the evacuation is.
Yeah. And
Like people don't know where to go.
throughout this movie, like usually you see a military. You don't see a single tank in this movie. You
Yes.
barely see any military. It's just police officers you see the whole time,
Yeah.
basically. There's one scene towards the end where you see like two military guys like with binoculars watching the monster, and like another two guys firing a cannon, and like that cannon is like the height of their military technology there apparently, and it's literally a cannon. It's not like a maser cannon.
Yeah.
It's like old school, like
Cannon.
hit it with the thing, light it up, and shoot. Like it's
Yeah. So they didn't have like, apparently like the way like the Korean military works is like they have, basically it's the United States military, and they don't have too many resources. So like, it's like they really do really only have police, and like the Air Force doesn't want to attack because they don't want to have any civilian casualties.
yes,
But that's why they have police officers kind of like shooting at the monster. But like the way this kaiju dies, probably they could have probably killed it with gunfire. But like they we cut back to the big building where everybody is. We have the mother looking for the daughter. We have the pregnant lady giving birth, and we have one guy who's got to do the biz. So he's squatting over a piece of newspaper, and then the kaiju rocks the building, and he splat right inside of it.
he falls right onto this crap in the newspaper. I thought that bit was hysterical. This
That
guy,
actually was hysterical. I actually
it's
did
like-
laugh
it's
out
like
loud.
the guy, so like, and when that scene opens, like the guy's like in like this building full of people. It's like a big building too. So I don't know why if a kaiju's attacking, you would evacuate to a skyscraper type building. Like you think that's primary target right there. And the whole time, this is like this whole evacuation scene with the building. It's like a pretty long scene in the movie. I mean, we're talking like maybe like 10 minutes at least. And the whole time,
least.
the space monster's just kind of like scoping out the building, like admiring the architecture. Like he's not even like hitting it right away. Like, and he does that with a lot of things throughout this movie. He's kind of just like looks at it like he's like so confused this whole movie.
Yeah.
And the other thing during this scene is the other two gambling degenerates are back. It's kind of cutting back.
Yes,
and
they are.
forth
Yeah,
to
they are
them.
back.
And they're still sort of fleeing the city a little themselves too.
But they also have
This-
fistful of cash.
Yes,
like
yeah,
placing
they,
bets.
They have like literal stacks, like they're about to shoot like a rap music video. I mean, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah,
Like, but like stacks.
they must have stopped at the bank and took their money out.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is quick bank stop during a kaiju evacuation. And this time, while the space monster's attacking the building, one of the things that happens is he picks up a giant piece of rubble, like a giant stone, and they're betting on which direction he's going to throw the stone, which city he's going to throw it towards. And the dude that lost his, allegedly lost the bet, where he lost his wife, loses that bet, and he's like, I'm sick of losing to you, and he's like, one more bet.
Yeah.
I think that's about it for those two guys. We don't get to see what the outcome is of the next
No.
bet.
So, you know, he kind of destroys the tower, but like not 100%. Like,
Yeah.
he still has Squirrel and the bride in his hand. He's just clearly disorientated. We finally get like some government intervention. So they're like, okay, electrify the power grid. We're going to electrocute him once he leaves the city. And we also cut to the military, and there's a bit of a mistranslation here, apparently. According to the if the way the scene plays out, it's the commander saying, you know, if you don't do this, we're gonna have to use nukes
Yes.
to destroy it. And apparently the actual translation is, because it sounds like the commander's like, we're nuking the monster, I don't care about casualties.
Oh.
But the translation is that he actually does and is trying to do everything to avoid that.
because the
So it's
translation,
not.
the way I got it, I thought that they said if this doesn't work, we're gonna nuke it.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, that's true. But like the way that it's phrased, it sounds like he like is like, oh, we're nuking it in the
Yeah,
city. I don't
yeah,
care about the
yeah.
casualties. But when the commander questions him and is like, but we're gonna have so many casualties if we drop a nuke. It's actually like, yeah, I know, I really don't want to do this. So like, let's make sure we
Like,
don't have to.
yeah.
But like that was one translation thing that like the commentator wanted to make clear.
Clarify. Okay.
And he's like, this is the first time we actually see like the government, not the military, like the government intervening and actually trying something instead of just having police officers do whatever police officers are doing. So he's like it's like the biggest kaiju trope is like, let's see if we can electrify it, and it never works. And of course, it doesn't work. The electrification, it kind of like stuns him a little bit, but it doesn't do too much.
No.
Um, so now we have Commander Ho and his fleet. They're going towards the kaiju because now they're outside the city. He's by a lake, and it's really weird the way they kill the monster. So Commander Ho like drops out of his ship somehow with a parachute, picks up the girl and the kid, and then also parachutes off the kaiju.
So the way I don't know the way I took this whole sequence here. So early in the movie, we didn't mention this. While Squirrel is inside cutting his ear, he kind of gets pissed off and he sprays these buildings with this. I don't know if you want to call it a ray.
So it's
like
supposed to symbolize napalm.
Okay.
Because it's right post the Korean War. It's about 10 years after the Korean War. It's supposed to represent the napalm that was used during the war.
He sprays a bunch of buildings with this, and the buildings like catch on fire and they melt. So he hits Commander Ho's plane with this while they're shooting at him. And like you said, Commander Ho ejects, somehow manages to grab the girl and the kid off him while he's parachuting down.
Yeah.
And the plane crashes into the monster, and the monster, I believe because of the way we saw the buildings burn earlier, the fire just keeps spreading on the monster. But back at the ship, the alien ship, they were already retreating. They were done. They're like, this operation's over. If the atmosphere gets destroyed, we can't take over this planet. So the way I interpreted it, because I could have sworn the alien said that they're going to terminate the monster. So I think they also initiated a self-destruct because they didn't want the humans to nuke the planet because they still want it for themselves. It was going to sort of leave it open for a sequel.
That kind of makes sense because kind of the way I interpreted it was like they don't have control of the monster anymore. A plane crashed into it, caught fire, and the monster died and kind of blew up. Kind of blew up like Power Rangers style, where it's like the monster's dead and it just goes in the background.
Yeah.
And like, like I know if that was like, again, like another joke, like, oh, conventional weapons aren't going to work on them, and just like a plane crashes and like that's how it gets taken out.
I'm pretty sure that the alien like said to execute the monster pretty much because they didn't want the planet to get destroyed.
They did want to because they didn't want it to get nuked.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what happened or if the thing just burnt from the napalm stuff on the airplane and the fire just consumed it and it exploded.
Yeah. It's a little unclear, and even they were kind of like, that's the ending. Like, it was like so anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's super rapid death, like boom.
Yeah. And then they're back on the beach, Commander Ho, Bride, Squirrel, and they adopt Squirrel and they walk off on the beach, and that's the end of the movie.
They're like, Squirrel, you're our brother now.
Yeah. One thing that they did mention in the movie is that it's a common trope in Korean movies is for families to get separated. And they say like that's supposed to symbolize the separation of North and South and how it's very painful and how they wish that they could be back together. So it's one thing to know. They said there was a lot of like cultural symbolism in this movie. Even though, it's not like the greatest kaiju movie in the world. They said like for Korean culture was pretty good. Like they had that one sign that was like, "Oh, 1990 World Fair." They weren't sure if that meant that the movie took place in 1990 because he's like it still looks like 1960s Korea. He's like, it doesn't make sense. He's like, I don't know if that was like supposed to be like a, hey, we can get this, because at the time the country was very poor post-war. The economy was trying to recover.
Oh.
So he's like, I think this was supposed to be like a, hey, we can get this country to a spot where we're going to have world fairs, people coming here, and we're going to be a center of technology, which kind of Korea is at this point. I mean, Samsung's like one of the biggest electronic companies on the planet. And also they produce like most, like a lot of the chips besides China. So like they really have rebounded quite well.
Yeah.
So yeah, mixed feelings about this movie. It's like an hour and a half long. It's worth a watch. Definitely worth a watch. And if you want to watch it in the best quality possible, again, the Blu-ray looks amazing. It's great
really good
quality.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the most mad-looking scenes are the airplane scenes because they were literally shot on like the airplanes. They don't use the models in this; they're like real airplanes.
Yeah, well, it's stock footage.
Yeah, stock airplane footage. So it's like
that's where it looks the grainiest.
Yeah,
because they didn't actually probably transfer film for that. It's just stock footage.
Yeah.
Probably copied a million times. The commentator was like, I've seen this footage like so many times. It's like it's just recycled over and over again. One thing he also did want to note is like he doesn't say that it's a Korean. I mean, he didn't say it's an American nuke that they're going to use. He's like Korea can't have nuclear weapons. He's like we never have and we never will. He's like it's illegal. So he's like I don't even know where they're getting this nuke from in this plot.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, the commentary was actually really good.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things like I kind of always like knock SRS for is that we might get a commentary track sometimes. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we get subtitles. Sometimes we don't. This one we got subtitles and a commentary track. So I was really happy with it. I think their best release they've ever done on disc because there's a bunch of special features on it, not just the commentary. And they put like a lot of effort into this one.
No, yeah, this was a big one. I really liked it. I mean, it's a cheesy movie, but I loved it. I had a great time watching it.
Yeah.
Did they say anything in the commentary about that one weird scene where he's holding the girl and he kind of like gets like dazed by her shoulder strap falling off and he's like, ooh. And
no,
she's like, oh.
Didn't mention it at all.
She's like, oh, let me fix this. Like he's like,
they didn't mention it at all.
He's like, there's some cleave over here.
Zero
it
mention.
was so weird.
Zero mention.
Some more humor that they stuck in there. I'm like, there was just like going into this movie, I did not expect it to be like this jam packed with humor and cheesiness at all.
Yeah, no, it was a good. If I had to give it, I'd say probably like 6 out of 10.
Yeah, that's
decent enough to watch. I've watched worse.
No,
I watched way worse.
I had a good time watching it.
Yeah,
I had a really good time watching it. And the one other thing is that bothered me about this when I was watching it was not about the movie itself, but like the story. This country, the city is going to be destroyed, and this girl's all she's concerned about is her wedding. She's literally like, my wedding's going to get canceled because of this. I'm like, I get it, but I'm like, literally, like, people are dying and houses are getting destroyed outside, and you're like, but my wedding.
Yeah.
like, oh, the priest, the wedding officiator evacuated. Oh, who would have guessed? Like,
yeah, at least the hairdresser stayed.
Yes, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, bit of a weird. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the squirrel gives her back her apple, and that's why she's like, "Oh, where'd you get this apple from?" That's supposed to be a big joke.
Yeah, because he had the apple on him, and she's like, "Oh, are you hungry? Why don't you have this apple?" And she's like, "Where'd you get an apple?"
Yeah, your house. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you guys for watching. If you stayed this long, please give the video a like or the podcast a heart or a like or a follow. Leave comments. Next episode, we're going to be covering Territory, and I don't know what movie, but I'm sure it's going to be something good.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But yeah.
See you next week.
See
or
ya.
whenever.
Bye.